The AOH interview. Yeah. That's be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, good morning. Welcome to November 15th ASSP meeting for the Alabama chapter. Today's presentation is by Mr. Ben Engel. I think I called it common ergonomic issues in the workplace and how to correct them. You've called your presentation what?
Ergonomics in action.
Ergonomics in action.
It'll be similar.
Then you're up and enjoy it.
Give me a second just to get you switched over.
All right. Well, good morning. My name's Ben, like Tom was saying. I'm an athletic trainer, so I'm the guy who runs out on the football field when somebody gets hurt. If you're watching a big football game or something, 10 years ago, I moved into the occupational setting. So, ever since then, you take the same approach really as an athletic trainer would, and looking at things from the difference. With an athlete, you may look at the biomechanics and the form that they're using to do something, especially in the weight room or something like that. Anything we can do to kind of increase their performance and decrease the risk of injury. So 10 years ago, when I moved out of that setting, and I gotta enjoy my moment when I can. I went to Ole Miss. I worked for Ole Miss. That was my last stint in full-time athletics. So I got to say hotty toddy because we just beat Georgia and we're riding high. So I got to enjoy my moment when I can. It may not last very long being an Ole Miss rebel. But anyway, I moved out of that setting 10 years ago and moved into the occupational setting. And what I realized quickly was that it was really no different. It was just looking at a different task, right? There was no ball involved, but the body moves very similar, and you see the same injuries that you see with those sports that I was used to seeing. And so we just took the same approach and started addressing things in the workplace the same way. So today we'll talk about that. I've got some videos and stuff. Hopefully they cooperate. Speaking of technical difficulties, I should knock on wood. I don't see any around. But hopefully we'll get those to work. You'll get to see some of the stuff we do and kind of what we're looking for. And hopefully you can bring it back to your sites and help you out. All right, that is me. I can still make a fanny pack look fashionable on the sidelines. And so I just included that picture just to kind of bring everything together, like from my athletic training approach on the sports setting. The places you guys are working, it really is no different. You're going to see the same injuries, and we can address them the same way. All right. So here, let's see. I don't know how I would make that work with this thing. Maybe you can click on it. Yep. So here we've got a place we work where they're loading refrigerator doors, and they do that all day. Just the same thing all day. So here we see some reaching when he went to retrieve it. Okay. We saw a one-arm lift. So he just used the one arm. It is light, but still doesn't mean we should just use the one arm. And we see a palm down grip. So when he does that, he's going one arm, which puts strain on the rotator cuff. We're kind of out, and it's all on one side, so it's not evening the load and the force of that door. But then when I go when I go into that palm down grip, then I'm internally rotating and I'm closing off what we call a closed pack position of the shoulder. It makes everything really tight within the rotator cuff. All right, versus like an open position or even a wide open, but even a neutral grip is kind of what we're going to see the most. Is going to relax the tendons and everything inside the shoulder. So we don't want to see all three of those things. That's kind of the perfect storm for a rotator cuff injury. All right, so we talked about the common workplace injuries. That's a big one we see, right? Probably depending on what industries you guys are in, you're probably seeing that every once in a while as well. So how do we correct that? Can you press play on that video? So we just coach him up. We've got two hands. He's got his elbows in. He's got a neutral grip versus that palm down grip. Even with the big one, before you say that was the little one, he can do it with the big one too. And we've limited the force and we've evened the load. We've cut his risk of getting hurt tremendously there just by doing that. And it was very easily applied, right? We don't want to give anybody advice when we're on site. We don't want to give anybody unrealistic advice. So we actually don't even recommend anything until we try it. If we can't do it and see that it can be done efficiently, because these guys on the production floor, and you probably have some folks like that too, they have to go fast. They're going to have their supervisor riding them if they don't get the job done on time. So anything we advise them on, we've got to make sure it can be done. So if it's something you guys bring back to your places of work, make sure it can be done before you just come out guns a-blazing. right? They don't respect that very much. That's not going to be received well by the employee that gets paid based on getting their job done fast. So we want to make sure it can be done. In this case, it was easily done. It didn't slow him down any, but it did decrease his risk of getting injured. So he had his elbows in. So he kind of moved in step. So I didn't have that on the drop down from the first one, but when he was doing that one arm lift, he was twisted at times. In this time, he goes to get the door and he's moving and stepping to his destination. Okay, so his body's never twisted, so his lumbar's safer too. And a real simple rule for you guys to remember, this is a saying we came up with: nose and toes, if they're going, so nose, toes goes in the same direction all the time, it's very hard to twist. So if I were an example of nose and toes not going in the same direction would be if I'm working here, my toes are pointed this way and my nose goes this way. But if my nose and my toes go in the same direction, then I'm not twisting. All right. So nose, toes goes, or a moving step. He kept his palms in there. He didn't have that internally rotated position that closes off the joint space in the shoulder that I was talking about, where it puts all the tension on the rotator cuff. He had his palms here and his elbows were in. There was no chicken winging. So that's something we want to look at. Make sure we're not doing that. And he kept everything in the power zone. The power zone is about from the chest to kind of like the quad or the hip flexor area. That's where we want to try to keep our loads. That's where we're going to be in the safest position, those core muscles kind of. And he stayed close. All right. And play that video. I'm sorry, Vincent.
That's all right.
You see similar stuff there, one arm grab. Little twist. She's probably been doing the job forever. She doesn't, and she's probably never gotten hurt, right? But that doesn't mean she's not going to get hurt. So that's where we've got to kind of build rapport, especially with somebody that's been doing the job for 20 years and never gotten hurt and it's never gotten in the way. But also as we age, the risk of injury increases. So if you're dealing with the aging workforce at your places and they've kind of always done it that way, then we got to try to build rapport on the front end to make sure they're receptive and receiving our advice. But in that time, we saw her we can see her twisting right now. She's going to go to her left to retrieve that part with one arm, and you're going to see similar as the first video we saw, reaching, chicken winging, all that stuff, and the palm down grip, okay? So we got to coach him up. And the guy who put this together for me thought it would be funny to put Nick Saban over it because he's a big Alabama fan. So how do we do that? Here's some pointers to kind of, this is like some quick things we teach our new employees too a lot. It's keys to look for, especially as they're getting their ergonomic eyes, we like to say. Notice the shirt on the left. You can see how the lines are more diagonal. Okay, so if I'm just walking up and there's somebody way across the plant, and if I can see the wrinkles on their shirt, then before I even get close and see what tasks they're doing, I can tell that they're probably twisting. All right. Versus the guy on the right, the wrinkles on his shirt are nice and horizontal, which means his lumbar, everything's pretty straight. Okay. So those are quick tips for developing those ergonomic eyes, doing something like that. Watching for the nose toes goes rule I was talking about, the chicken wing, and all those things are things we're looking for. All right, we got another video. All right, does anybody have like pallet jacks at their sites? Everybody does, right? Or even if we just go into the grocery store grabbing our buggy at Walmart. All right, so if we do that, we're extended, we're abducted at the shoulder, all right, and we're palm down. So everything's tight. And the issue with that, do you guys at your sites ever maybe there's like a nut or bolt laying around or a piece of wood or something that they don't see and they could kind of roll over it? Well, if I'm doing that, I'm already in all those bad positions, those dangerous positions, and I hit that, whatever that is on the ground, jerks me backward, and then I can have a bad injury there. All right. So that's something we like to coach against. The challenge there you'll see is sometimes the stacks are so high that we can't get behind it and push it, and we can't do some of the things. So we've got to kind of get creative there. But here you do see a one-arm pull. You've got the outstretched arm reaching and not facing the work. So we talked about facing the work at the first slide. All right, how do we fix that? So we got to play around with that a little bit. So here he's in this scenario, he could push it. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't very high. Now, Grant's about 5'11". So if you have someone that's 5'5" or less, that could be challenging because they couldn't see over it. All right. So what do we do in that situation? Well, we can actually take that handle, that pallet jack, and we can try to get them to walk a little closer to it. So we're not way out here, but we can kind of bend the elbow and utilize that biceps a little more. Biceps is kind of like the quads are to the legs, those powerhouse muscles. The biceps kind of that to the arm. So if I can kind of bend my elbow a little bit and walk a little closer to it, then I can utilize my biceps a little more, let it take on all the force and the load that's going to place, and keep it off of that shoulder joint. All right. And I'm also not abducted and extended and all that bad stuff. I'm not stretched out. I'm not maximally shortened and put on stretch. I'm here and I'm engaging my biceps. That's one of the harder ones we coach because I'm guilty of it still. If I go into the grocery store and grab my shopping cart, I grab it and I catch myself. And I really do catch myself. I used to not, but now I've done it for 10 years and I do tend to catch myself most of the time. But it is human nature to do those things that way. All right, so we do got to get creative. Hopefully they're tall enough to see over it and we can just teach them to push it. If they're not, we've got to play with it a little bit. Again, before you come in with those kind of advices, make sure you can do it. Try it out yourself before you tell somebody to do it. All right, so try to face your work. Use both hands, elbows in, and avoid reaching, okay? Everything we've looked at so far, you've seen some rotator cuff risk, you've seen some twisting, so you've seen some lumbar or some back injury risk. So these are things that we can do to easily combat those or at least lower the risk of them happening. All right. Let's play that video, Vincent. Thank you. So these are challenging because this line's going to keep moving, but he's bending over at the waist. We don't like that. He's got the one arm reach. So here, this job can actually be done seated. Okay. So that's where we kind of looked at it. It's actually on the other side where she is, where you can sit down with it. So other things we can look at here in this scenario, one thing you can do, if it is unavoidable and I can't sit, one thing you can kind of coach them on is that golfer's lift. So have you ever seen a golfer go to pick up their golf ball? They kind of pull their pant leg and then they bend down, they extend that leg, right? In this scenario, I wouldn't always coach that or teach that to folks because that balance, you do have a risk of falling, going to one leg, but they can brace on that frame. So if I brace on that frame, then I'm stable. I can kind of lengthen my hamstring and allow my back I can allow myself to get to that without my back bending and without that lumbar flexion. When you have that lumbar flexion, we call it you'll hear the word like energy leakage. You hear that more in like lifting and strength training when you're doing something like a deadlift and you're straight and then all of a sudden the back bends and that energy or the force that's traveling up has a place to kind of attack. You have an energy leakage spot. So that's what we're trying to avoid here is to have that energy leakage. So to do that, I can teach them to kind of go into that golfer's lift technique and limit the amount the lumbar's bending if I can't sit or something there. Okay. So here she's doing a similar job. She's sitting here. Let's see what we can pick out here. Okay. So she's bending there too. Leaning, one arm reach. So still doing some bad stuff. It's better than standing. So there you just kind of have to look at it and see what else you can do. If there's nothing you can do, we like to teach these folks about prehab. That's doing rehab before needing rehab. So it's prehab. And And so we strengthen those at-risk areas. If there's nothing you can do, if things are unavoidable, then you could, at your places of work, you could maybe introduce warm-up programs to target those areas. You could have wellness stations with flyers that target those at-risk areas. It gets tough sometimes. How do you engage employees and get participation? If you can incentivize it, that's great. I know that gets tricky too, incentivizing wellness programs. So, but those are just some ideas how to get participation, because sometimes it is unavoidable. Sometimes the task is just too hard to change. There's no engineering changes that can be made or human behavior changes. So in that event, we like to teach them to kind of strengthen those at-risk areas. All right. So I like this chart because it's real easy, and it also it stresses the importance of keeping your back straight when you lift. Okay, so we've been talking more about rotator cuff and lumbar injuries, I know, today, but when we're talking about the lumbar, we're talking about the importance of keeping the back straight. Like when I talked about doing the golfer's lift, so we do this instead of this. There's research that shows that this force can be multiplied up to these amounts. I use the up to because, again, I like to make this a little scary and really stress the importance of it. But it really could be up to this point. So we use a 40-pound box for this example. If I reach to grab it, so let's say it's there and I got to reach, then that could turn into 400 pounds of force exerted on my spine. That kind of goes back to like Newton's laws and stuff, like what goes up must come down, and for every action there's equal or opposite reaction. It's kind of like they're gonna have to be absorbed. That force, that 400 pounds, has to be absorbed somewhere. So when I reach, that force, that energy, that force goes from 40 pounds up to 400 pounds. Okay, if I bend, then I can multiply it by another 10 pounds. So I've reached and I've bent. Now I'm at 4,000 pounds of force. And if I twist, I can multiply it by up to 2. So all of a sudden, a 40-pound box turns into up to 8,000 pounds of force, pressure, energy, however you want to think about it, that has to be absorbed somewhere. And at times, especially when we talk about that energy leakage where the force picks on a weak spot, it can cause a bad injury. All right, whether it's muscle or disc or whatever, when we're talking about the back. I know you think, well, nobody ever lifts that bad, but I'll give you an example that's a little less work related, but I guarantee you'd lift like this. Okay. If you've got toddlers in your life, whether it be grandkids, kids, or whatever, and they want you to pick them up, a lot of the time we do that exactly. So I reached, bent, and twisted, and you throw them up on your hip. All right. And they weigh 30, 40 pounds. So all of a sudden, you could have up to 8,000 pounds of force when you're picking that toddler up. So I like to use that example. But a lot of stuff in the workplace is 30, 40 pounds. Typically, typically up at 50, you recommend a 2-person lift. That's kind of standard. But you could use 50 as well, and then it becomes 10,000 pounds of force. So that's kind of a little chart you guys can use. Talk to your employees about it, about their form and why it's so important to keep the back straight. Instead of just telling them lift your legs like we've told people their whole life, and you got a lot of places have the little stick figure that it shows a little stick figure squatting and it says lift with your legs. This kind of rings home a little bit more, I think, if we explain it. All right. So this is a place where they're actually lifting the same material, but it's coming out of 2 different boxes. So let's look at the difference here. So it's same material, we could use that box, but for whatever reason, they're using this box too. So instead of it being a lower box where I can maybe do the golfer's lift and limit the amount I'm bending, it's short enough to where I could probably use 2 hands in a golfer's lift and get it out of there. Or you've got this situation where they're having to hold the box up, they're all chicken winged, putting that rotator cuff at risk, reaching in. So you got this at risk now, and then you've got this at risk because I'm going 1-arm lift to get it out. So these are just things to kind of have your eyes open for. And it could be as simple as asking somebody why it's done that way, and they can change it. Sometimes you get pushback from engineering and that kind of thing, but it could be as simple as just asking. All right. So if you can't change it, maybe you could use two hands and go ahead and take that lid off, get it out of the way, and then lift it a little better with the palms up and the elbows in. Maybe two hands. If we don't have to worry about the lid at all, it changes things a little bit. So those are just some scenarios if we're stuck with that box specifically. All right. You could also, maybe you could implement some kind of stand like your car hood has. If that's possible, you could get something to where they could stand it up and not have to worry about holding it if you can't take the lid off or whatever. Maybe you could get a step. You know, these things then you've got to think about other issues with a step. Is the step going to cause somebody to fall? Is it stable? Is it in the way? But these are just things. This is the way we try to think when we're thinking about solutions, is just throwing it all out there and let's see which ones stick. You know, which ones can we actually do? Different lids. And then that would be implementing another device like a stand or something to help. All right. Okay, and then these are just some pictures we'll run through. These are utility workers you see. Just coaching them up on some of their behavior. You know, it's pretty easy to implement some of these, like this one. This is pretty easy to just, we can go from there to there, and all of a sudden it's a much safer task. All right, what can I do on that side to maybe limit? Maybe now I'm worried about some contact stress from kneeling, so I can give the guy a kneeling pad, you know, or some knee pads. Okay. Here, just lower the bucket a little bit more. So that's where we build a relationship with these guys, and they give it, we kind of pick on them, they give it back, but they typically are receptive to our advice. And that's all it is here. Now you got this guy reaching and this guy reaching. If I just take one more second to lower my bucket, then it's a much safer task and job. All right, here, just kind of grabbing lower and keeping those elbows in when we're handling that. They call that an old man stick. So it's designed to reach things that are up high on the pole. All right. Just some people just need to be told. All right. We got what we can surely figure out how to get that to him without him having to climb that ladder with one arm while he carries that. All right. Cases of water. These are real examples. These were not all staged. This is, you know, they grab them like that, throw them from the shoulder. I'm chicken winging. I've got contact stress on my shoulder. Got some issues there, or I can just grab it with my elbows in, use both arms, get those biceps working, and lower the risk of getting hurt. All right, any desk workers you deal with, any folks that are sitting a lot. We see that picture on the left a lot, you know, or we sit on our legs or whatever. I've seen a lot of stuff. But I'm outstretched. Probably not gonna utilize my swivel much there. I'm probably gonna reach and grab stuff that it's to the side of me. So we want to kind of clean that up till we get to the point where we're on the right side. So we didn't talk a whole bunch about wrist injuries, but carpal tunnel is obviously a big issue in the office setting. So if I can get to a place where my wrist is more at neutral and I've got my little wrist support there on my mouse pad and I'm up close, then I can reduce the risk of getting some of those wrist injuries. All right. So this is a deal where they've always got this device available and they just don't use it, but it's right there close by. So we coach them up on using it. You can make it a 2-person, or because what is happening is they weren't doing a 2-person or using that. You had somebody just lifting the cylinder by themselves without the device or without help. So at the very least, let's use that device. Just trying to look for solutions like that. All right, then the 6 steps of lifting. So we use that chart before that talks about the force equations and the multiplications that are happening when we use bad form. How do we coach them on it? You got six steps of safe lift. You got a wide base, bend the hips and the knees, keep it in the power zone, chest out, chin up, lift with the legs, and move in step. If I put all those together, I like to use the sports examples. If we're football fans, which we mostly are in the South, we can use this. It kind of looks like a defensive lineman scooping and scoring on a fumble. Okay, if you put all those things together, the ball's on the ground, they come in, they scoop, pull it in close, they lift with their legs, They stand up and they go. All right. Or you could talk to them. You can kind of use the example of like a basketball player. You know, they've done all those things. And then to move and step, they pivot and they go, kind of have the nose toes. So we like to use a lot of examples that are relatable and make a lot of sense. And also, if anybody ever tells you it's slower to do those things, then you can tell them to go try to guard an elite wide receiver as a defensive back and try to twist and see what happens if you can keep with him when he goes to run by you. Got to open those hips. Everything, all this, the good form is the fastest and efficient way to do it. So they can't really make the argument that it slows them down. Uh-oh. It's going backwards. I've got it upside down. That would explain it. All right. That's me in action there doing that same demo I just did with you guys. All right. Any questions? All right. Well, good. Well,
Thank you.
yeah, thank y'all.
Yeah, give you the
Oh, wow. That's an honor. I like a good coffee mug.
Yes, these actually work in the microwave and the refrigerator.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Time to go.
Morning.
A long time.
Wow.
Legion to the flag, of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to serve our fellow man, to give back to the community. We thank you for giving us the education that we need through these meetings and the courage to do what we need to do in our workplaces to protect our employees. We thank you for blessing the food that we're about to receive, for the nourishment of our bodies. In Christ Jesus our Lord's name, amen. Amen.
Numbers, yes, that show up today. I've never been before. I don't think they're right. Anybody have any safety shares or issues? No. One thing I did bring up, did we get an ASSP announcement? Any you did from J.J. Keller, for the federal regulation book? Anyone get that? It did work. Email that came in, I said, yes, I'll take one of them. And it's the big binder with the code regulations in it. So, the spam, there was an email that was sent out by ASSP.
I'm surprised that anybody is sending out paper. It's just to,
First of all, I can't see in the computers.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's best, but still like paper.
Any opportunities coming up, there's really not much going on in University of Alabama's OTI group in December, because we break down for 2 weeks at the end of the month. So they do have some interesting ones, and I usually go with interesting ones versus the same ones they have every month. They have some materials course at the end of January, and they also have an incident investigation course. UAB obviously is open the whole month of December, and they don't fit down, so they do have a couple of refresher courses and initial courses, one on audiometric initial refresher training, the other one on spirometry training and refresher training, both are in December. For more information, go to their websites. Central Alabama Construction Conference, is it going to be March?
It's 20th or 27th. We
They haven't figured out
have
yet?
locked down. No, nobody, yeah, we haven't locked down, but it will be
It's
last.
For anybody who hasn't been to it, it's free, which is always good. It's a one-day conference. Don't let the name fool you, construction conference. It's more general industry than is construction, especially if it's beautiful sunny weather. Because it rained 2 days before the conference and the construction guys got to catch up. So we'll be at the Hyundai facility, training facility down in Montgomery, UAB's.
You'll register through Deep South Center, yep.
We'll do the registration, probably starting January, maybe late.
Probably
early
in January.
They do feed you for lunch, usually Jack biscuits, are for breakfast, and leftover Jack biscuits for lunch. No, they have somebody coming. They've done fried catfish, they've done barbecue, so it's pretty good, and it's free. What more could you ask? We've already done 2 PDCs this year, mainly focused on construction. We did, silica, hazards and controls, and then we just did one last Friday, construction, electrical safety, both through ABC. Well, we're gonna do an AGC in the spring, I hope, and I'm waiting for the, vendor to get back to me to tell me they're available to show the where to do a mannequin drop with the equipment. We're gonna do fall protection, general industry and construction PDC that day. I already got the presenters lined up. Vendor to say, yes, we're good to go. So hopefully we'll be doing this sometime this spring. We're pretty much set for the rest of our tenure as executive committee with the exception of March. I have a question mark there. Randy said, no, yeah, workers' comp, you can still get sued. Question. How? Workers' comp supposed to cover your injured employee or still get sued. We come across and got a lawyer who's been talking about it. We're hoping to do it in March. We don't know if we're gonna do a PDC, so maybe a little more than a regular meeting, or we're just gonna do a regular meeting. So that'll be coming up. And anything else? Because of April, Joel, send me the paperwork. You're doing record keeping in April. That Randy talked to you about. I don't know if you remember that or not. But we're looking to do that again. So if you want to send me the paperwork, or if we got your record keeping coming up in April, and we got Joel coming and doing a presentation in December with a regulatory update as well. And hopefully Adam is going to show up. Kind of silent. So I will get the information up. That was just dropped off the planet. The contact, he was transferred out to Washington, I think. We found out, so we don't know the guy. I doubt very much we'll have them shot. But we're trying to get Adam and we're working on it. So with record keeping done in April, we're gonna have to hold off on recognition luncheon until May, but we would do a members recognition lunch like we did last year. And then the new executive committee will take over. Which brings me to elections. Paul's on the nominating committee. You're on the nominating committee. There's another person on it, and I gotta elect somebody to be on the nominating. We're not sure if all sections will be at election cutoff. Definitely Montgomery, Auburn, and West Alabama. Plus we lose the sections. We're still deciding if for the Northeast their elections last year, so they're really in the first year. All related on their bylaws that they have. The elections are coming up. Alan can't leave as treasurer once you're treasurer till you die. That's we all know. And then we can't lose Vince as our secretary because he's the only one who knows how to handle the ASSP. So VP and president are all. Unless nobody elects them, Paul is more than happy to be president or VP, whatever he finds out. If you're interested, get a hold of Paul or let me know. Election information will be coming over the time. Decide if you want.
The pay is fantastic.
Especially if you're VP, because you get to pay for lunch every month, then you're reimbursed. Next meeting will be December 13th. That's the second Tuesday versus the third Tuesday. Third Friday, sorry, not Tuesday, Fridays. Because we're so close to Christmas, we moved it up to the 13th. And you know, people will be traveling, heading out to families and so forth, or they have the families coming to them. So it'll be the second to Friday, which will be what a full Friday. So yeah. Any questions anybody has? Or basically we're taking account. We have a report meeting, keep up when you count, so you don't forget. And then I said, no, that's not what you do. Keep forgetting stuff every year that remember. Up on us, we don't forget things that we've done. And take credit for what we did, because you get points and so forth, and hold back to the ones that teacher did. your teacher? 3 years? Okay, good. So other than the name tags and t-shirt, that's what you get paid for is yeah. We're also looking for a program chair, which we haven't had for. Program is on full board. Finding presenters for our meetings, for our PDCs and so forth. And we used to have pre-COVID chair for everything from moving these chairs around, chair member, to where we met chair member, to, hey, I'm here, chair member. So we dropped all of those and we haven't had anything but an executive committee. So we're looking for a program chair and we also need really a government affairs chair, which we haven't had anything. What does a government affairs chair do? You read the email that comes from ASSP on government affairs, everyone, and update us on what's in it. That's pretty much what the government affairs person does. So if you're interested in one of those chairs, which isn't that hard, other than, I should say that the program chair is fun. You will have fun trying to find presenters. And how we're looking at the chapter moving forward is we really would like to have really good presenters to bring people into our meetings. You give them a good presentation, they'll usually attend, especially if they're getting additional information they can use in their facility. So enjoy your lunch and maybe 1 o'clock.
Well, when you.
12.